You've awakened, but now you're looking at your partner, your family, your friends, and you no longer recognize them. The old conversations feel hollow, the emotional patterns irritate you, you want to scream or disappear, and you're terrified that the love you once felt was just an illusion held together by your old self. You ask, have I outgrown them, or am I just escaping again? Let's tell the truth. After awakening, your emotional field recalibrates. You no longer seek validation the same way. You don't react from childhood wounds as predictably. You start seeing others not as sources of comfort or triggers, but as mirrors. And that shift breaks many unspoken contracts. You used to play a role, the good one, the fixer, the rebel, the provider. But now that role doesn't fit. And when you stop playing, others get confused, angry, even hurt. Not because they're bad people, but because your old ego kept their wounds safe too. Your transformation threatens the ecosystem. So what do? First, understand this. Your awakening will disturb the dynamics you were once attached to. That's inevitable. You are no longer who you were. The system is recalibrating. Don't run. Don't collapse. Stay with it. Then, follow this map. 1. Recognize the rupture. Don't sugarcoat it. There is a real shift. You're no longer available for codependent games, for projection loops, or for emotional manipulation. That's growth. 2. Own your new center. Stop waiting for permission to evolve. You don't need others to get it. Your truth doesn't need consensus, just clarity. 3. Grieve the past roles. Let yourself mourn the version of you who once needed certain people to feel whole. That version kept you safe. Honor it, then release it. 4. Relearn connection. Now you don't connect through neediness, but through presence. Not please complete me, but let's meet as we are, not as we pretend to be. And here's the paradox. When you no longer seek love to fix you, deeper love becomes possible. But beware, some relationships will end, and that's okay. You're not betraying anyone. You're simply stepping into your real self. Those who can meet you there will stay. The rest, let them go with compassion, not guilt. Carl Jung said, "We don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That includes the darkness of your attachments, the fear of being alone, the grief of transformation. But once you face it, love becomes cleaner, less addictive, more real. So don't panic if connection feels harder after awakening. You're not broken. You're detoxing. You're remembering how to love without chains. Let's be honest. The real challenge isn't the awakening itself, it's the after. What do you do after the big insight? After the ego collapses? After the illusions fall away? You still have to do the laundry, pay bills, face deadlines, raise kids. You still live in a human body. And that's where most people break, not in the peak, but in the return. That's why Jung spoke of symbolic life. Without it, he said, the modern individual is overwhelmed by meaninglessness. Because enlightenment is not about escaping reality, it's about inhabiting it differently. You have to learn how to cook dinner and answer emails as if they were sacred acts. Not because they are glamorous, but because they are vessels for consciousness. This is the next stage, not awakening as an experience, but as a practice. Not an event, but an integration. So here's a roadmap, one that turns ordinary life into alchemy. 1. The ritual of the mundane. What if brushing your teeth could become a meditation? What if grocery shopping was a ritual of gratitude? Begin with attention. Infuse presence into repetition. The secret isn't to escape the mundane, but to see the sacred through it. 2. Purpose without performance. You don't need to change the world, just align with your essence. When action flows from inner coherence, everything becomes infused with meaning. Whether you're writing code, cleaning a room, or guiding others, purpose doesn't have to be loud, it just has to be true. 3. Emotional alchemy. Instead of suppressing your emotions or dramatizing them, learn to digest them. Ask, what is this feeling teaching me about my unmet needs, projections, or outdated stories? Emotions become messengers, not enemies. Energy, not threats. 4. The framework of inner authority. Create your own rules of operation. For example, I pause before reacting. I choose presence over productivity. I measure success by inner congruence, not external applause. These become your internal code, your sovereignty in action. And remember this, you will feel lost again. You will forget. You will fall back into old patterns. That's not failure. That's part of the spiral. Every cycle takes you deeper. Your job is not to be perfect. It's to keep returning again and again to the part of you that knows. Now let me share a quick story. One client of mine, after his awakening, found himself working a mundane office job he used to resent. But instead of quitting, he asked, how can I do this job with devotion? He started arriving 10 minutes early, sitting in silence before opening his laptop. He listened deeply in meetings, even when he disagreed. Slowly, everything changed. Not because the job became divine, but because he did. You don't need a monastery, you need attention. You don't need to retreat, you need to return, fully awake, into your real life. So next time you're washing dishes, walking the dog, or replying to messages, stop, breathe. Remember who you are beneath the doing. That remembrance is the work. That's symbolic life. So here's the trap nobody warns you about. After the awakening, after the collapse of the old ego, a new ego quietly emerges. But this one wears robes. It speaks softly, it quotes Rumi, it calls itself conscious. This is the spiritual persona, and it's far more seductive than the old identity ever was. Why? Because it hides inside enlightenment itself. Jung would call this the inflation of the ego with archetypal content. The moment the ego touches something greater, self, God, the unconscious, it can become possessed by it. It starts to believe it is that greatness. And this is where so many seekers get stuck, not in the dark, but in the false light. Let's break it down clearly. 1. Signs you're caught in the spiritual persona. You start performing awakening rather than living it. You feel superior to those who are less conscious. You reject all negative emotions as low vibration. You become obsessed with being seen as healed, high frequency, or beyond ego. This is not awakening, this is another mask. Lot 2. How it forms. After the ego crumbles, the psyche needs structure. But if there's no grounded integration, it will latch onto the next available identity, often one that feels safe, admired, or validated. The spiritual world offers a perfect template: sage, healer, guru, empath, starseed. These roles give a sense of belonging and superiority, but they also trap the person in subtle performance. 3. The cost of inflated awakening. You disconnect from your raw humanness. You suppress shadow material under a smile. You lose touch with real connection because vulnerability becomes too messy. In short, you lose your soul in pursuit of purity. So what's the way out? Here's the framework. A. Practice shadow integration. If you feel irritation, envy, shame, judgment, don't bypass it. Welcome it. Ask, what is this teaching me about parts of myself I still reject? Shadow work grounds the light. It keeps the human heart open and honest. B. Break the persona. Deliberately do what your spiritual self wouldn't. Swear. Dance to pop music. Be awkward. Admit when you're lost. Your divinity doesn't need defending. True essence has nothing to prove. C. Return to service. Ask not, how do I appear awakened? Ask, how can I serve? The spiritual ego wants status. The soul wants connection. When you act from genuine care, humility replaces performance. Let me share a moment. A woman I coached, after years of retreats and downloads, confessed she felt more anxious now than before. Why? Because she had to maintain the illusion that she had it all figured out. She was trapped in her own enlightened brand. The cure? We stripped it all away. Let her grieve, rage, doubt, and that's when her real presence emerged. Messy, honest, magnetic. So if you feel the pressure to always vibe high, if your awakening has become a cage of smiles and mantras, it's time to exhale. You're allowed to be raw, to be unfinished, to not know. That's where real awakening begins, because the light isn't something you wear, it's something that moves through you when you stop performing. There's a strange and silent place in the middle of transformation. Not the breakdown, not the breakthrough, but the void in between. You're not who you were, but you're not yet who you're becoming. This is the liminal, the cocoon. And it's terrifying, because it feels like nothing is happening, like you're wasting time, like you're lost. But here's the truth. This is where the real metamorphosis happens. Not in action, but in stillness. Most people try to rush through this phase. They jump into new careers, relationships, philosophies, anything to escape the unbearable silence of not knowing. But Jung would say, stay with the tension. Because in that tension, the self is preparing to be born. So how do you survive this sacred in-between without losing your mind? 1. Understand what's dying. Before something new can emerge, the old identity must dissolve. But here's the trick. Ego doesn't die quickly. It dies layer by layer, and every layer brings grief. Not just sadness, but the disorientation of not recognizing yourself anymore. Mourn that. Say goodbye. Speak the eulogy of your old self. This is not regression. This is release. 2. Accept the emptiness without escaping. This void is not a mistake. It's a womb. But your nervous system may interpret it as a threat because it's unfamiliar. You'll feel urges to fill it, with goals, with meaning, with distractions. Don't. Instead, build tolerance for spaciousness. Create rituals of non-doing. Light a candle and sit in silence. Journal not to solve, but to listen. Go for walks without a destination. These small practices develop the muscle of being without needing to become. 3. Use the liminal anchors method. In times of ego death, you need grounding that doesn't require certainty. These are your liminal anchors. Simple, repeatable actions that give structure to chaos. Examples: a morning tea ritual done the same way every day, a playlist you return to that reminds you of stillness, a weekly walk in nature where you ask no questions and expect no answers, a single question you revisit: what is life trying to show me now? These small anchors stabilize your nervous system while your identity is reforming in the background. 4. Watch for symbolic dreams and synchronicities. During liminal phases, the unconscious becomes louder. You may notice strange dreams, repeating symbols, odd coincidences. Don't analyze them to death, just track them. They're clues from the self, gently guiding your new becoming. Let me be real with you. This middle place, it's where I almost gave up. More than once, I thought I'd ruined my life. That maybe I had imagined the awakening, that nothing was ever going to be real again. But that silence, that hollow stretch where I couldn't go back and didn't know how to move forward, it forged something deeper in me than any breakthrough ever did. It taught me that presence is not about power. It's about trust. So if you're here in the void, the waiting room of your next incarnation, don't force the doors. Don't rush the birth. You are being rewired, gently, quietly, precisely. And this is the paradox. The more you stop trying to fix it, the more the new pattern starts to emerge. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're in between. And that's not a failure. That's a passage. You wake up spiritually, and suddenly everyone wants to give you a path, a teacher, a method, a community, a set of truths. And at first, it feels like salvation. But slowly, you begin to feel it. The same suffocation you felt before awakening. Rules, expectations, pressure to perform. You've traded one prison for another. This is the trap of spiritual dependency, the illusion that someone else knows your path better than your own self. Jung warned about this. He said the goal of individuation is not to become enlightened in someone else's system, but to become whole in your own psyche. But when you're vulnerable, after the ego crumbles, it's tempting to reach for anything that promises stability. The danger is that you mistake borrowed wisdom for inner knowing. So how do you recognize that you're caught in a spiritual trap? Dr. 1. The false self reinvented as the awakened self. You stopped chasing money or validation, but now you're chasing transcendence, purity, or cosmic significance. Same ego, new costume. You're still performing, just on a different stage. Ask yourself, if no one could see or validate my practice, would I still do it? 2. You outsource your inner authority. You find a guru or a system that makes you feel safe, and you start deferring every choice to it. What would they say? What does this book recommend? You're not thinking, you're not feeling, you're complying. That's not awakening. That's regression. True guidance should awaken your authority, not replace it. 3. You fear falling backwards. If the thought of breaking the rules of your spiritual path terrifies you, you're in a dogma, not a process. Growth is not linear. Sometimes going forward feels like stepping backward. That's okay. A real path allows space for the human, not just the ideal. Let's be brutally honest. Spiritual communities often recreate the same dynamics as families and religions: hierarchy, shame, conformity. And that's not evil. It's human. But if you're not awake to it, you'll mistake structure for truth and community for selfhood. Here's a test. Could you walk away from all of it, the teachings, the groups, the practices, and still feel whole? If not, it's time to reclaim your inner compass. Here's a simple framework to reset your inner sovereignty. The 3 R's of reclaiming. Recognize the signs of over-identification. Where are you acting out of fear or obligation? Reconnect to your direct experience. What is your body saying? What dreams, feelings, synchronicities are showing up? Rebuild trust in your own psyche. You don't need to be right. You need to be real. And yes, it's scary. To stand alone, to admit you don't know, to stop parroting the teachings and sit in silence with your own truth. But that's where the real integration begins. In the space where no one claps for you, where no one tells you you're doing it right, where the only voice you have left is the one within. Here's what I've learned the hard way. No teacher can give you what your own psyche is already trying to reveal. The task is not to find a perfect map. It's to learn how to read the terrain of your own soul. So if you've been clinging to someone else's compass, it might be time to drop it. Not because they were wrong, but because the deeper truth is already inside you. And you'll never hear it until you stop outsourcing your authority. You don't need more spiritual content. You need more empty space, more silence, more presence. That's where the real voice speaks. You don't need a new life. You need a new lens, one that sees through the ordinary and finds gold in what you once ignored. That's the core of symbolic life. Jung said, "The lack of meaning in life is a soul sickness of our time, and it can only be healed by living a symbolic life." But what does that actually mean? It means stopping the constant search for escape and learning to read your own life like a sacred text. Noticing how your morning routine, your relationships, your breakdowns are all trying to speak to you if only you'd listen. Let's begin with the core shift. Before awakening, you think, "I suffer because my life is meaningless." But after awakening, you begin to sense, maybe my life is trying to teach me something and I've just been deaf to the symbols. So here's what living a symbolic life looks like. So 1, you stop separating the sacred from the mundane. You realize that folding laundry, tending to children, facing grief, these aren't distractions from your path. They are the path. When you bring presence, everything becomes ritual, not performance, not aesthetic, but sincere, lived attention. That's sacred. 2, you interpret events symbolically, not just functionally. Let's say your car breaks down 3 times in a week. Symbolically, that might point to movement breakdown in your psyche. Where are you forcing motion instead of surrendering? Or maybe you're dating someone emotionally unavailable. That might not just be poor luck. It might symbolize a part of you that's afraid of being truly seen. The world reflects your psyche. If you learn its language, you can decipher its messages. 3, you reconnect to myth. Jung said we don't live myths. Myths live us. If you feel stuck, it might be because you're trapped in the wrong story. Are you unconsciously replaying the martyr, the orphan, the seeker who never finds? Symbolic life invites you to consciously choose your archetypal narrative and live it with awareness. Here's a practical framework for entering symbolic life. The S-sign method. Silence. Begin each day with a pause. Before the phone, before the roles. Just breathe and listen. Inquire. What is life showing me today? What keeps repeating? What irritates me? These are clues. G-round. Bring attention to your body and your environment. What patterns do you feel in your bones? Translate raw experience into symbolic language. This anger is the fire I've denied. This fatigue is the death of an old identity. Once you start living this way, nothing is random anymore. That coincidence at the grocery store, that song that hits too hard, that dream that won't leave you alone. It's all part of the dialogue. The soul doesn't speak in plain language, it speaks in image, pattern, archetype, synchronicity. But be careful. This isn't about magical thinking. It's not about escaping reality. It's about rooting deeper into reality, seeing its layers, listening to its whispers, aligning with its pulse. Symbolic life is not fantasy, it's radical attentiveness. Now, how does this heal the post-awakening void? Because it gives you meaning without clinging, direction without dogma, purpose without performance. You don't need a grand mission or constant highs. You need to notice your own breath, the way light falls on your wall, the fact that you weep when you hear that one line in that one song. All of that is the sacred bleeding through. Most people wait for purpose to be revealed in one huge, thunderous event, but the soul reveals itself in symbols, small, quiet, persistent, like a drumbeat you've been too busy to hear. If your awakening has left you numb or hollow, maybe it's not because you lost something. Maybe it's because your attention is still pointed outward, waiting for fireworks, instead of inward, toward the soft glow of the symbolic. Here's your action step. For the next 7 days, keep a symbolic journal. Don't write what happened. Write what it meant. If you argued with your partner, what part of you was actually speaking? If you lost something important, what identity are you being asked to release? This practice alone can rewire your entire perception. Because when you start treating life as a mirror, not just a maze, you stop surviving it and start participating in it. And this is where everything shifts. Not through another breakthrough, not through another course, another answer, another guru, but through a quieter kind of revolution. The one that happens when you stop reaching and start reading your own life as sacred text. When you recognize that the soul doesn't shout, it whispers, through symbols, through patterns, through ordinary moments that are anything but. This video wasn't just about information. It was a recalibration, a remembering that you are not broken. You are being spoken to by your own deeper nature. And we're only getting started. In the next episode, we're going to go even further. We'll expose the trap of the spiritual showcase, how your awakening can become a mask, how ego sneaks in through the back door dressed in white robes, and what it really means to dismantle the false self. You'll learn how to recognize performative spirituality, not just in others, but in yourself. You'll see why some enlightened states are actually clever avoidances, and more importantly, how to return to what's real, humble, alive, yours. So if this resonated, don't just watch and forget, subscribe, because what's coming next isn't just another video, it's the mirror you didn't know you needed. I'll see you there.